Can time be encapsulated? Perhaps we should begin with a definition. The simplest being recorded information. Time capsules seem fun to create, but some may argue otherwise. Welcome to Dorrs Down. Today we freeze time, preserving information for the future in the form of time capsules. But first,
let's talk about vigilantes. We've all probably heard the news or even seen the video of the United Healthcare CEO being assassinated in New York City last week. Today, we'd like to discuss public reactions. One of the things that I read was that anytime they have some kind of a crime like this and they're on the lookout for the perpetrator, that there's a lot of internet sleuths and armchair sleuths around the country who get involved and they reach out to their network of people and, get eyes on the ground for any sightings of the person. And what I read was that the police were kind of startled because none of those armchair detectives, these internet sleuths, seemed to jump on board to try to find the shooter of this CEO. And it just felt different, the public reaction to this, which was obviously, a cold-blooded murder right in the middle of the city.
Well, the reaction, the fact that, or not the fact, but the assumption, maybe the speculation that our armchair sleuths are not helping out much, or not as willing to help out to try and find the guy that did this, which now they've already got him, but that's not the point.
Right.
Is that the reaction of those people isn't much different than people in the story of Robin Hood that were helping
Look the
Robin
other
Hood
way, because Robin Hood was helping the people and
helping the poor, robbing the rich and giving to the poor. Which we didn't write this down, but I got thinking about it. That's also sort of Jesse James. Sit down and let Jesse rob the train.
That's right.
Because Jesse was robbing trains, and the trains that he was robbing were the trains were
owned by the railroad barons.
Yeah, really wealthy people, and even the money that he was stealing was from banks and wealthy people, and the rest of the people that were on the train were just commoners, and they kind of felt like they were being wronged by the wealthy in our country, and so that's maybe the sort of the same thing here. Les Miserables was like that.
Yes, it was.
So one of our favorite stories.
I love the musical. We just love the show.
Yeah, excellent. And there's this scene where there's a bunch of poor beggars that are just suffering in the streets, and they're singing a song, and they're singing about the
clothes on the back won't take out the chill.
Yeah, that's right.
And there's no bread to be had.
With the righteous riding past on their horses, and that the children are begging to be fed.
Yes.
And it's misery. Les Miserables is miserable.
And I think there is a lot of public, I don't know the word, not anger, disgust, maybe, I don't know, unhappiness with the healthcare industry.
Dissatisfaction.
Yeah, dissatisfaction. I, for one, my son Greg had United Healthcare, and he was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. And the treatment protocol, which drives me crazy, is always dictated by the insurance company and not by the doctors treating the disease. So Greg's treatment was chemo first. That didn't work. Then the next treatment was a bone marrow transplant. But before insurance would approve a bone marrow transplant from a donor, he first had to undergo a bone marrow transplant of his own bone marrow. Now, that doesn't even make sense. He's got cancer. So they're going to take out his bone marrow and cleanse it and then put it back in. It doesn't even make sense. But the issue was that he had such an aggressive form of the cancer that the transplant of his own bone marrow didn't work. And they had to immediately move to a bone transplant from his brother. But
By that
going
time, his body had already
it was
taken
just
such
endured so much.
such
To
a
do a
hit.
bone marrow transplant, they have to completely destroy all your immune system, and it's really hard on your body.
And they'd already done so much treatment with him that
Mm-hmm.
in his particular case, the treatment was worse than the
Yes,
disease.
yes. And he ended up dying. And he didn't die from cancer because his brother's bone marrow was killing his cancer. But he died from 2 bone marrow transplants. His body just couldn't handle it. And so, I was angry. I felt that United Healthcare had killed my son. And I've said that several times, that their stupid protocol where they have more power than the doctors to determine a medical treatment is why Greg died. And, parents don't get over very easily their children dying, and they retain that anger. And I know I have. So, and United Healthcare has been in the news because there's been a lot of unhappy customers, and there's been a lot of protests. There's been a lot of lawsuits. So it doesn't surprise me that somebody was driven to this point of unacceptable, retaliation.
Where they felt they were so powerless that when you're that powerless, when you're pushed into a corner and you're a rabid animal and all you can do is lash out, that you're so powerless that the only thing that you can do is pull a gun and commit a murder. Not in broad daylight, it was in the middle of the night.
Well, no, it was 6 in the morning.
But
it
on
was dawn.
on a sidewalk in the
Right.
middle of a busy
Mhm.
city, and just pull out a gun and shoot somebody point
I mean,
blank
it's
and
crazy.
kill somebody.
And murder is never justified. It's never the right choice.
And
But
this,
I can understand the aggravation with United Healthcare. I was there.
this assassination was a message to all the rest of the CEOs.
Mm-hmm.
And the message was from somebody that was so desperate to get the message through, and he believed in it so much that in reality, okay, so no, he hasn't lost his life yet, the shooter
But he
hasn't.
has.
But he's going to be in prison for the
Life
rest
in
of his
prison
life.
for the
or
rest
more,
of your life is losing your life.
or just as likely he'll be executed. But
right.
either one of those scenarios, his life is over.
That's right.
So he has given his life for an ideology that he
Right.
believes so
Mhm.
strongly in, that he was willing to take another person's life and to end his own at the same time.
And just to kind of put into context, I was doing a little bit of research because, this week we're kind of dealing with Chris accepting and realizing that he has diabetes and he's probably going to need to go on insulin. And we were looking, and I found a report where the average cost of insulin in London is $7 a month. The average cost of insulin in Canada and Germany is about $12 a month. And the average cost of insulin in the United States is $98 a month. Why? Why do we do this to our people? I don't think you should.
I want to throw in 2 cents here. As I devil's advocate, and I'm always devil's advocate
Yes,
on
you
everything.
are.
Is that there's 2 sides to every story.
Mm-hmm.
Always. And the CEO that is dead on the sidewalk, and the shooter that is now lost his right to life, or normal life anyway, the insurance companies and how they handle their policies, and them denying claims, and people that have diabetes and have a different price to pay in the United States than they do in Norway. I mean, all of this stuff, to me, we all die.
Mm-hmm.
There's no negotiating it.
That's true.
You can't get out of it. It doesn't matter how smart your doctor is. It doesn't matter how many billions of dollars you have in the bank. It doesn't matter how many debts you owe. I mean, I'm poor. I'm as poor as anybody that I know, and I'm almost 60 years old, and I thought that I was a pretty smart guy. When I was 16 years old, I thought I had it in the bag. By the time I was 60, I was going to outperform and make wise decisions, and I was going to be light years ahead of all of my peers. I was convinced of it.
Well, Chris.
And now I look back on it and I realize that I'm powerless. I'm as powerless as the guy that was pulling the trigger on that CEO in New York.
Well, now that might be true, but I will say you're not the poorest person I know, because I think you're pretty stinking rich. You have a wealth of knowledge and spirituality.
Well, now
I think that's
now
enviable.
you're coming around to my way of thinking, is that what's the point in complaining about the CEO or shooting him? And what's the point in feeling like you're powerless if there's nothing that I can do to change it? I can't. There's not. I wish I could just snap my finger. And if I could just snap my finger and just instantly have $1 billion in the bank, or I don't care, even if it was $100,000 in the bank, just to make myself feel like I wasn't a complete loser, which I am.
No,
but
you're not.
I recognize that the best thing for me to do is recognize that I've got a certain amount of time, and our podcast is about time.
It's about time, and it's about using your time, the time that you have, and however short or however long, using it wisely.
The beauty of time is that it's also a great equalizer when it comes to value.
Yes.
Is that you could be a multi-billionaire.
Every person in that cemetery is
the
the same level down.
You have this. That's right. If you're a billionaire, you have the same amount of time on your time.
You're all 6 feet under.
Yeah, that's right. Your time capsule is running out if you're a billionaire, and your time capsule is running out if you're. I'm saying time capsule because that's our episode, but it's really time. What's our lifetime?
Yeah.
So it's running out, and so I have a hard time. I have a hard time just not speaking up and saying, I call bullshit. It's all It's all crap.
Yeah.
The whole thing is crap.
Well, I could see that side of it too.
I'm just glad that it's Christmas here soon, and we have grandkids that are going to enjoy
boy,
Christmas
doesn't
gifts.
That just change everything?
It does. It's really much better. So, where else are we? Oh, there were a couple of other examples. So, Les Miserables was on that list, but the Romanovs. We talked
about the Romanovs. Yeah, they.
So for a couple hundred years, their family had such opulent, absolutely astounding wealth. Way more than, there were maybe 1 billion people on the planet, and this one family had power and control over all of them.
Yes.
And it finally got to a point when they were saying, let them eat cake, that they finally decided, they're going to lynch them. They're going to get rid of these people that are, it was all of the proletariat, I think is the name of the group. I don't
know, but
they decided that they were done with the
czars
and all that.
Led the country dry. So they did their revolution,
so they
and
showed
they brought
up on
in
a sidewalk,
socialism, and
so they showed up on a sidewalk at 6:00 in the morning with a pistol and shot them to death because they're the CEO of a giant company that just won't listen to anybody anymore. They've got all the power, and the only way to take it away from them is to kill them. So that's what they did to the Romanovs.
And the world will just keep on till pretty soon everybody kills everybody and there's none of us left.
Yeah,
I saw a book in the library today that was like, what if human beings were extinct off the planet? What would happen? I almost got it. It could be interesting.
Jesus died for his ideology too. And his ideology is that we need to love each other.
Yes.
Stop killing each other.
That is important.
Stop
I agree.
Enough already.
I agree. So now let's get back to time capsules. Time capsules are more than just boxes buried in the ground. They're whispers to the future, preserving fragments of our lives, our hopes, and our world. What do time capsules say about us? In this episode of Dorrs Down, we're digging up time capsules. With one chance to communicate with the future, what would you say?
Well, I like the whole story of Voyager 1.
Oh, I think that's fascinating. I've been learning about that today since you've been talking about it.
So Voyager 1 was launched in 1977.
Wow. I had
We're
just
pushing
graduated
almost
from
50
high
years
school. I
ago.
wasn't even married yet for my first marriage. I
Yeah,
was
I hadn't
19
even
years old.
watched Star Wars yet.
Ah.
So 1977, they launched this thing, and it cost them like 120 million or something, which is that's a spit in the bucket today,
Right.
right? But they launched this thing and they send it, and it looks like a space probe. If you ever tried to
Uh-huh.
imagine what a space probe would look like, it has this weird looking dish with these little cat whisker antennas sticking
Uh-huh.
out from it in different positions and stuff, and it's like beep 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 beep
Mm.
from way the hell out in space. And it went out and it checked out all of our planets, and it just kept right on sailing on out into the vastness.
And it's been out there how long now? Did
Almost
you say
50 years, like
47
47,
and
48
something?
years. Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
just blows my mind. I
Yeah.
mean, how far away is it? And here's the crazy thing. We still talk to it.
Right.
It's like
It takes a whole day for us to send a message
one
from
message.
here, all the way from NASA, all the way out to where it is at 15.5 billion miles from us.
I can't even imagine 1 billion miles.
Yeah, what's a billion miles? Never mind 15.5 billion.
Yeah.
How far is a billion miles? I mean, it's just crazy. So 15.5 billion miles it is from us. And it takes us a full day to communicate out to it. And then when it gets its message from us, it takes another whole day for it to send a message back to us.
I think it's unbelievably bizarre and blows my mind that we can talk to something way out there.
And, that's a transmission using radio waves, which travel basically at the speed of light.
Mm.
So I hadn't thought about this before, but that means it's a 1 light day away from us. 1 light day. People talk about 1 light year.
I don't know what that means.
1 light year is how far light can travel in a whole year. So that's when you're measuring between stars and stuff, when you've got galactic spaces that are 100 trillions of miles away, then 1 light year is one of those. But 1 light day is how long it takes for the light to travel for 1 day. So it takes, stop that.
I have to get out the kaleidoscope.
Do we hear crickets again?
That's
No.
just too much.
1 light day is really cool. I know you don't understand it, Toby, but I think anybody without a kaleidoscope can understand it. So
I think
1 light day. Anyway, the point of bringing up Voyager 1 wasn't to describe it and tell us how far it is and how fast it's moving and where it has traveled through and all that and how many years it's been doing it. The point is that they also, the scientists that put this thing together, put on a golden record aboard Voyager 1 with greetings from Earth in 55 different languages, and they put instructions on how to play the record to any extra ETs that are out there that are listening to this thing.
Like as if they can read it.
They have a phonograph with them.
They probably go.
So the extraterrestrials have phonographs.
Did we put it in UFO language like did we use that language? Because that's probably as much likely what they're going to say is put this record on the record player and plug it in.
Let's hear more of that language.
No.
Oh, come on, Toby. Come on. How'd that go again?
How about that?
Yeah.
We'll do it at the end. They probably talk with clicks.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Well,
who knows?
So.
But I don't think it's English.
It doesn't really matter what it is. The point is,
how
that
are they going to read the instructions?
But that's not even the point. They won't read the instructions. It'll be out there, and even if there was it's never going to meet an extraterrestrial, and everybody knows it. Even the scientists that put it together know that it's not going to find an extraterrestrial. There's no extraterrestrials out there. But even if there were out there and they did find this thing, they're not going to be able to read it at all. It's just going to be this weird artifact, and they'll be stunned and they'll be puzzled. And even if they have super intelligence, they're not going to be able to figure out what the heck that is.
It's kind of like we were watching that one show, but the silo or something, and they found a Pez dispenser.
Yeah.
And they couldn't figure out what it was. And it got me thinking, that's so true, because if you found this Pez dispenser laying on the ground and there hadn't been any around for 50 years, you wouldn't have a clue that it used to hold candies.
Yeah, that's right.
I could see them really puzzling, like, what's the purpose?
Right. And not only that, but, I mean, we even have assumptions, as basic assumptions as these are, we just take it for granted that if there was an extraterrestrial anywhere in the universe, that they're going to have the same senses that we have, that they have the sense of sight, that they have a light that reflects off of this Voyager 1 instruction sheet that shines off of it and reflects back into their eyes, like they even have eyes. We call them eyes, but whatever it is that they detect, whatever they're going to detect,
Well,
we don't even know if it's eyesight. We
I
don't know
think
if they
the
have
Voyager
vision.
1 time capsule wins the award of the most bizarre time thing I've ever heard
Time
of.
capsules, as far as
Yeah.
time capsules goes, Voyager 1 takes the cake.
Yeah, I'd say.
I mean, if you're going to put a bunch of stuff
nothing
into,
else comes close.
if you're going to put information into an object
Mm-hmm.
and send it off to somebody that you don't know, somebody in the future that might have a chance at trying to understand what this is all about, there's nothing that's more extraordinary than Voyager 1.
Right. I
That
agree.
is a time capsule.
That's a crazy story.
Yeah.
That's a crazy story. Well, you remember Geraldo found something.
Wait, before we go to Geraldo, let's go all the way to the other end of the spectrum. So,
What's that?
1977, they launched Voyager 1.
Uh-huh.
But in 1980 somewhere, I was maybe a teenager, and I was living in Columbia, Maine, and on my farm, on Dad's farm, growing blueberries, there was this one rustic, very out in the woodsy kind of a road. It was a dirt road that ran all across his property, but somewhere in the middle of it, there was this strange phenomenon where there was like this muddy area that was really muddied up the road, and my dad mentioned it a bunch of times, and I noticed it, and I finally decided one day when I was just a teenager to figure out a little bit more about it. So I went and started digging, and when I started digging where this water spot was at the road, I found that there was water that was like bubbling, and I thought maybe it was some sort of a boiling spring, you know, that's water out of the ground that's under pressure that's pushing up a little bit, right? And I dug a little bit more and a little bit more and cleared it out a little bit more. And son of a gun, what I came to was a wooden pipe.
Huh.
It was made of cedar. And what I learned at that time is that cedar is one of these woods that if you saturate it with water, it doesn't rot forever.
Can you imagine boring a hole
Down the
300
length of a
years
cedar
ago
pipe.
down the length of a cedar tree to make
Cedar
a
tree
pipe?
to make a pipe, yeah.
That's bizarre.
And then put it all in the ground, buried in the ground and connected to a pond that's at a higher elevation than this one is, so that gravity would push it down this pipe and it would bubble up at the end of this pipe.
I bet he had a
livestock
barn
or
there
whatever
with
back in
cows.
the 1700s
You know,
or whatever.
Bessie the cow needed water.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to walk that far to carry buckets. I don't blame him.
And he probably
Have you ever carried a bucket of water? It's stinking heavy. One bucket of water is so heavy.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you're watering a cow or a horse, you better be carrying 2 buckets, and that's impossible.
Especially the distance from the pond, which is,
Yeah.
1,000 yards away. I mean,
Wow.
it's just a long distance.
Yeah.
So they put in this wood pipe, and I'm guessing that they put it in the 1700s or the 1800s.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe as far back as the 1600s.
Could
It was possible that it happened before the beginning of our country.
Oh, it could have been Native Americans that did it. Do you think?
I suppose it's possible, but no, I don't think so, because
I don't know if they
when I
would-
dug it up, it looked like this thing, the hole that was in it was a perfect hole down the length of it.
I
It wasn't like something that they kind of
Carved with a
somebody used some
bone.
sort of a tool or
Yeah.
some sort of drill
Interesting.
tool or something to make
That's
it.
interesting.
Anyway, the point I'm getting at here is that the pipe itself, the wooden pipe, is information. And it's recorded information. Just being there was recorded information
Yeah.
that told me that somebody in the past had done this work and had
Right.
been there and they were
Right.
doing something. And the message that came through to me was, wow, they knew how to do
Right.
wood pipes.
You know,
That's pretty
and
cool.
I was reading up on time capsules, and it really said that the purpose of time capsules, a lot of people think they're for a lot of different things, to say who was the president and who was in charge and what was, but really what people want to know when they come up on a time capsule is, what was everyday life like back then? What kinds of things did you do? And I think that cedar pipe was a great educational discovery about what life was like back then and how innovative they had to be.
The spectrum I love is the contrast between putting a golden record to aliens in outer space, and a wooden pipe in the ground that was buried there maybe 200 years before. That both of those are time capsules.
Yeah.
Because they're both carrying information to people in the future, and I'm one of the people in the future from the installer of that pipe.
That's pretty cool. Well, I remember Geraldo found. What did he find? It was a time capsule, or it was a safe or a vault, and he got this TV show going, and they did all this promo about, oh, here's the vault. We're going to open it in 4 days. We're going to open it in 2 days.
Al Capone's?
I don't know what it was. I don't remember.
Or was it the Teamster guy?
I don't know.
What was the Teamster guy's name?
We'll have to look it up. It was... I don't know, Chris.
You know the teams. Everybody knows the teams.
Tom Pendergast?
No.
That was the Kansas City guy.
It was two H words, like Hugh Hefner or something.
I don't know, but we'll find it out. I don't want to waste time guessing right now.
Everybody knows it, Toby. We already
Hugh
know.
Hefner. No, that's the Playboy guy, right?
Yeah, that's the Playboy guy. I'm talking about the guy that wound up disappearing. He was a Teamster boss, and everybody...
Whitey Bulger?
No. Oh. No.
Okay.
Anyway, so Geraldo found this vault, and
Jimmy
Hoffa, that's it. So the vault, supposedly everybody expected to be filled with artifacts and proof, and I don't even know if it was Jimmy Hoffa. I don't know who it was.
We'll have to look up.
But anyway, we should have looked it up.
We should have.
And what I liked about it is, as soon as you mentioned the Geraldo thing, the first thing that I thought of was a pop culture reference, which was the movie The Titanic.
Well, wait, let's finish about... It was Al Capone's. That was Al Capone's vault.
Okay.
We didn't finish about, he made this whole show, took all this TV time, got prime time slotted for him, and they opened the safe and it was empty.
So they
had relatively nothing in it.
So Geraldo promoted this thing and made it into a big sensational thing, and took the whole thing to a crescendo. And then when they opened the door of this vault, there was nothing in it.
It was a 2-hour live special that was broadcast on April 21st, 1986. 2-hour live. How can you cover 2 hours live on a box of nothing? I mean, that was awkward, I'm sure.
Yeah. So,
well, I have a Geraldo story.
Oh, yes, you do.
I do.
I forgot.
So, right after I was sentenced to prison, my mom got a phone call at her house. And the person on the phone said, "Hello, Mrs. Phelan. This is Sam Smith. And hold just a minute. I'm going to put Geraldo on the phone." And my mom said, "Oh, no, you're not." And he said, "You don't want to talk to Geraldo?" And my mom said, "Who in their right mind would want to talk to Geraldo?" And she hung up on him. I think that's funny. I'd talk to Geraldo if he called me today. I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was Al Capone, a 2-hour live special. I can't imagine how awkward that could have been.
So in the movie Titanic, the captain that was exploring the Titanic had a specific goal in mind, and what he did was in the story. This is all fictional,
in the movie.
But in the story, he explored the Titanic at the bottom of the ocean,
with Jack and Rose,
and retrieved from the Titanic the ship's safe. The ship's safe, which supposedly at the night of the sinking of the Titanic, as far as this fictional story goes, that there was the heart of the ocean, which was a diamond that was in this vault, in this safe, and this captain of the ship retrieved it from the bottom of the ocean inside the Titanic, brought it all the way up to the ship's deck up on the surface, and then they cut it open with some saws and stuff. They cut open the safe, expecting to find the heart of the ocean, this big diamond that was worth, $1 billion or whatever. And he reaches in there and he just pulls out a bunch of muck, and his number 2 guy on the crew is standing behind him videotaping the whole thing. And he's like, "Boss, Geraldo had the same thing happen to him, and his career never recovered.
That's funny. And there's another link. This has another link to us, this story. Didn't we go see Al Capone's prison cell in Pennsylvania?
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't that Al Capone's cell?
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that wasn't the one that was the vault that was
no,
opened by
but it was
Geraldo.
Al Capone's vault.
It was Al Capone's.
So we have ties to Al
prison
Capone
cell,
and ties to Geraldo.
Oh, we've
personal ties.
Yeah, and you're a criminal.
Yeah.
And I'm a criminal.
Yeah.
We're criminals. So yeah, good.
So, I have another one. Remember we went to that Little Red Schoolhouse antique store a couple years back. It was somewhere up in West Virginia in the mountains. And I bought that little diary. It was not very big. It's really small, but it was a little notebook. And it was written by Dorothy. And she was 15 years old at the time. It was in 1919. Remember I bought that diary?
Yeah, and
it was
she
just
said
amazing.
something about what was cool about it is that she was sharing what her daily experiences were, just average everyday experiences. And she said that she bought something in there, didn't
Pantyhose.
Pantyhose.
Yeah.
She bought pantyhose?
Yeah.
What
or
year
nylons.
was this?
It wasn't pantyhose. It was nylons. 1919.
1919.
She lived in Baltimore. She bought nylons and she wrote in there how much they cost. And then she talked about, going over to her friends' houses and doing things. And I think it's just fascinating, that little diary. And I heard a story somewhere about someone who found a diary similar to that, and they published it as a book, which was kind of interesting.
Well, the thing is that time capsules, the definition of a time capsule, really what it boils down to is that a time capsule is just recorded information.
Yes.
That's all it is.
Yes.
And it can be in the form of just
snapshot.
A relic.
Right.
Like that pipe, that wooden pipe that was buried in the ground is just a relic. It's just something that somebody left behind. And they did something and they created something that was unusual, that it wasn't just nature. And in the fact that they had created this thing and left it behind, it creates a time capsule. It provides information that gets carried into the future so that people like me can understand what happened back then.
That's interesting. So have we answered the question, Chris? Can time be encapsulated? And what would you put into your time capsule?
I would argue that time cannot be encapsulated.
I would argue that as well.
A
snapshot can be encapsulated, but not time itself.
I would argue that a time capsule, what it really means is it encapsulates information and carries it into the future. But time, I think it's notoriously an evil little demon that will not be captured by anything.
I think you're right. It just does its own thing. And it continues on. Can't
stop it.
No, you can't stop it.
Yeah.
You can't even slow it down, although prisons try really hard to.
Yeah. It seems like that. Yeah, that's true.
So we talked a little bit about creating our own time capsule.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting idea. I would maybe challenge anybody that wanted to put a time capsule together. I think that they can do it. It's pretty simple. What my first thoughts were to just go down to Home Depot and buy a Schedule 40 pipe that's maybe a 5-inch pipe or something.
You're talking about that white PVC
pipe, yeah, that's
you can
really
screw a
durable.
lid on it.
It'll last a long time, and you can
Makes
screw
sense.
a lid on it, and you could put a bunch of stuff in it. And we also thought about what kind of stuff would you put in a time capsule.
Well, I think something I'd like to put in a time capsule, although I don't want to let them go right now, are my prison journals, because I really think it tells a journey of letting go of things.
I love the idea of putting your prison journals or anything that's written written into a time capsule, because written stuff is pretty good.
Yeah.
I also like that it kind of goes back to you buying that diary from that girl.
Yes, and it's just fascinating.
Getting an idea as to what a person's day-to-day life is like. And
it's really
somebody in the
interesting.
future could understand what your life was like while you were in prison.
Yeah.
By reading your journals.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I would be fascinated to find somebody else's journals. If
I would
500
too.
years from now I found some plastic
Wouldn't
thing
that be cool?
and opened it up and there were journals from somebody 500 years ago that were talking about when they were in prison, that'd be pretty neat.
So I think we're going to put together a time capsule. And
all right, but wait. The time capsule thing is also super complicated.
Oh,
There's
of course
so much
it is.
more to it. And the thing is that if you're going to consider what you're going to put in a time capsule, I think it's more important, in my opinion, to consider why you would put it in there.
You know what? Maybe we should do 2 time capsules.
I thought
one
about
to
that.
leave to the family.
Yeah.
And one to leave to our listeners and give them instructions for how to find it. Geo mapping or geocaching or something was really popular a few years back before COVID, and people would bury things and they'd put it on some website and they'd give the coordinates and they'd give clues and people would go find them. That'd be kind of cool.
Well, that'd be cool if we had 1 million subscribers and we had 10 people that were willing to actually do it. But,
so
yeah.
you never know.
Maybe 500 years from now we'll have 1 million people listening to us.
I think we will.
We'll be long gone by then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
which is also a part of a time capsule.
That's right.
So maybe
I think it's kind of interesting.
Maybe you've got an idea. Maybe we'll explore that. So here we are at the favorite part of our episode, which is felony murder, inspired by John Maynard. And in a way, John Maynard himself was a human time capsule.
Really? How do you say that?
So think about that just for a second. So John Maynard first off, he's 17 years old in 1996, before cell phones came out, before they had pagers, I think, back then.
They did have pagers,
but they didn't have cell phones, and they certainly didn't have smartphones, and they didn't have internet, and there was a lot of things that they just didn't have yet. And they took John Maynard and they buried him deep in a cell and left him there for 13 years until you came along and stuck him in a dog crate and took him out of the prison.
Oh yeah, and his mind was blown by all the stuff out here. He said, "What is wrong with people? And they walk around staring at those phones. What's on those phones?"
Right.
So when they don't talk to anybody.
When he came out and experienced all of this new technology for the first time, not only was it a wonder for him, but even other things like the candy that he hadn't been able to eat and junk food and stuff that he hadn't been able to eat for 13 years.
Drive a car.
He came out and he acted like a human time capsule, like he had been protected and was just this. He was a product of 1996 that wasn't opened until 2008 when you opened it. Right. That's pretty fascinating.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way. Which, by the way, you notice John has new digs over there.
He does. He has an urn.
I went to the crafts show this last weekend to finish my Christmas shopping. And sitting there on the urn was this quirky little black and white with red accent jar.
And his ashes and a bit of his hair
are in there.
Are in that urn. So so he's here listening to us.
That's right. And there's still room for more stuff. So I thought maybe as we go along and we think of things that he'd like to know, maybe I'll write them on a piece of paper and stick them in there. We'll put it all together.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Be kind of cool.
They'd probably fit in there better if you burned them.
They probably would.
Along with the rest of the ashes that are in there.
That might be a good idea.
Maybe.
Yeah, I kind of like that idea. So this story that I have for you this week is a crazy one, I think. Joshua Brown was behind the wheel of a maroon Plymouth sedan.
Does the Plymouth sedan, does it matter that it's maroon?
Well, I think it does, because...
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting. Go ahead with your story.
I think it's important because that's kind of cool. Cars are black and white and gray now, but back then we had maroon cars. That's kind of cool. Anyway, this was a blast from the past. Okay. So this was November 2nd, 2014, just after midnight. So Joshua Brown is driving this car, and Deputy Matthew Chisholm in El Dorado Springs, Missouri, which you may not know this, Chris, but Tom and his first wife or second wife lived in El Dorado Springs, and that's where Tamir went to high school. That's where they were living when she went to high school. She graduated from El Dorado Springs High School. So there's another tie.
It's a small world.
It is a small world.
We're also tightly connected to El Dorado Springs.
Well, no, not me, but Tom was. Anyway, this Joshua Brown was attempting to be pulled over by Deputy Matthew Chisholm because they had a busted headlight. But Brown, he had methamphetamines in the car, and he didn't want to get pulled over, so he sped off. And Chisholm followed in his patrol car. At some point during the pursuit through the county, Brown slowed down to let his passenger, William Collins, get out and run away. Chisholm stopped as well.
Okay, hold on. Time out.
Okay.
So here, let's recap here. So
Joshua Brown is driving. Joshua Brown is driving.
Brown's driving a car, a maroon car.
Yes, a maroon one.
And he's got a buddy with him, Collins.
William Collins.
Brown and Collins are in this car, and they drive off because they're crackheads.
Well, no, meth. It's meth.
Whatever. And they drive off, and Officer Brown puts a chase to him.
Officer Chisholm puts a chase to Chisholm's the officer.
So
let's just call him the deputy.
So the deputy puts a chase to these two guys,
Yes.
two hoods. And the guy that's driving, Brown, slows down long enough to drop off Collins, and Collins starts running across the field.
Collins starts running. And instead of the deputy following Brown in the car, he stopped his car and got out decided to chase Collins through the field.
Which I think is a smart thing for a cop to do, because the chances of catching a car with your car is probably less likely than catching some guy that's already on foot.
Okay. Anyway, so the foot pursuit turned into a shootout.
It wasn't just a shootout. They shot each other dead.
That's right. Chisholm had a gun. Of course, he's a deputy, and Collins had a gun. And they started shooting at each other, and they both died.
Okay.
On the scene.
Yeah.
I don't know who died first, but Brown, the driver who had fled the scene and was not involved in the shootout, was charged with murder in the deputy's death. Now, to prove felony murder, prosecutors must show that the defendant committed a felony and someone died as a result.
Committed a felony, not just the murder. If it was
right,
if the felony was a murder, then you don't need felony murder to
That's
charge
right.
them. You just
That's
charge
right.
them with murder.
Right.
But when somebody has not committed a murder and you're trying to get them for murder, then you have to
prove that they committed a felony.
A felony of some sort that was related to the death of the
right.
officer. Right.
So in Brown's case, the best they could come up with was a felony for hindering prosecution.
Which is a pretty stinking weak felony.
It's barely even makes the felony label.
So it's
the lowest level
a
felony in the
with
books.
just a little touch
just a little bit more teeth.
Yeah.
So the case went to trial in 2016, and a Greene County jury found Brown guilty of felony murder, which carries a possible life sentence.
But the judge said, no, sorry.
Yeah, the judge said, when it came time for sentencing, the judge said, I never felt good about you trying to try him for felony murder. That isn't really what felony murder is intended for. This is a stretch.
Yeah.
And he threw out the murder conviction.
Yeah.
He did get sentenced to prison time for some other stuff, but not for murder.
So get to the point is that...
So in 2019, now 3 years after his first murder conviction was thrown out, and he's still in jail for whatever other charges he got, the prosecutors decided, okay, now we'll try him for the murder of his buddy who was involved in the shootout and running through the woods, Collins.
Yeah.
Because before we only charged him for the death of the deputy. So this won't be double jeopardy.
It's not double jeopardy, and there's no, what do they call that when time runs out?
There's no statute of limitations
on charging somebody with murder.
That's right.
So here it is 3 years later. And I thought this was interesting because when you read me this story the first time before our episode came up today, I was thinking, why wouldn't they just charge him for both of the deaths,
Uh-huh.
the
2
police
counts of
officer
felony murder,
and his
right.
buddy Collins.
They saved one just in case things didn't work out.
Then they came back
And
and they got him.
prosecutors are wily that way.
They got him for the second one.
They did get him for the second one. They found him guilty of felony murder on the second charge.
So now he's doing life?
No, he only got 15 years for it.
Oh, only 15 years.
Well, I mean, it's better than life.
Yes,
But it was added on to the 10 years he got for the first bunch of charges.
Right.
So it'll be a 25-year sentence.
You know, I can't help but throw this in. Again, devil's advocate.
Mm-hmm.
This all started with these guys being a couple of meth heads.
Well, yeah. And, you know, if they'd gotten pulled over, they had a busted headlight. They might have got a ticket and gone on.
I got to tell you that our podcast, I stand squarely that I feel that felony murder is a loophole and it's bullshit and it must go away. I'm an advocate for ending felony murder, and there's nothing that's going to change my mind off of that. I am absolutely convicted to it. However, there's an awful lot of times when I can feel less sympathetic about somebody that gets busted for felony murder when they're a crackhead to begin with.
Well, yeah.
You know, that doesn't make it.
But that doesn't make him guilty of murder.
No,
being a
I agree.
crackhead.
I agree that it doesn't make him guilty of murder. But the point I'm getting at is that the thing that I don't mind nearly as much if the system, which is a corrupt system, everybody knows that it's not quite right, especially when it comes to felony murder. But if they were using felony murder to go after people like Al Capone and people that were really detrimental to society and they couldn't get them any other way, then I see no problem with felony murder. But they're using it to take otherwise basically law-abiding citizens that may have made some sort of a mistake and they did something that was a misdemeanor that was just over the line into a felony, and then they throwing murder on top of them and taking them to prison for the rest of their lives. That's bullshit.
I agree. Now, I do want to say here, we're not anti-police.
No.
You know, I think for the most part, policemen have a really difficult job. And I don't blame them. You know, you watch videos of people yelling at them and screaming at them, and I don't go for that. But I also don't go for drumming up charges, which isn't the police doing it, it's the prosecutors.
Right.
So.
Yeah, well, I work at U-Haul making reservations for customers all over the United States and Canada. And half of my customers are just pleasant customers that are making a reservation.
Yeah.
And 10% of my customers are just wonderful customers that are so quick to just get their credit card out and make a reservation, and they appreciate me and they tell me how much they appreciate me, and they love that I have so much knowledge about my job and everything else. And then there's that group
that
of
little
people,
percent of people that just come after you.
They are just miserable. They've got a chip on their shoulder and they just want to treat everybody like dog shit. And those are the people that I feel bad for police officers that have to put up with that segment of society.
I agree.
Which is a big part of their job.
It is, because that's the people they're after most of the time. Yeah, it's not fun. So policemen out there, we get you. We don't have a beef with you guys.
Yeah, no, we don't. Now it's time to draw a card from our basket and reveal the topic of our next episode. Let's see what time has in store for us.
Okay. This will be pretty fun.
I'm going to get through to the middle of a pile.
Okay, because they're all stacked up. What have we got?
Time and technology.
Ooh, now that's kind of fits in some with today. Excellent. Okay. By the way, Chris, next week we're going to do a Christmas and New Year's message. So in 2 weeks, we'll release this time and technology episode.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
I think we should do that.
Yeah.
We did it for Thanksgiving. We should do it for Christmas.
Right, we will.
Fair enough. Okay.
So take the time to ponder what message you'd like to leave for future generations and visit our website. Be sure to consider our petition to end felony murder.
Make suggestions for our time capsule project using #2Doors time capsule. This is Chris and Toby Dorr communicating today and tomorrow. 2 Doors Down. It's about time.
Subscribe on YouTube at 2 Doors Down. For exclusive content, check out our Patreon channel. Our website is twodoorsdown.com.
Until next time.